Shalom, this is Daniel Stern coming at you from Netivyah here in Jerusalem. And today I wanted to talk about Iran's decision to launch an unprecedented wave of missiles and UAVs towards almost all of the Gulf states, including Iran's close partners. This stems from a clear doomsday weapon strategy. Facing attacks from the United States and Israel, the regime in Tehran feels its back is against the wall, and its message to the world is, if we fall, the entire global economy will take a hit along with us. To understand the cruel but calculated logic behind this move, let's break it down country by country and then try to connect everything into one picture. Let's start with Qatar. Why would Iran attack Qatar? After all, Iran and Qatar aren't just supposed to be good friends, they are practically partners. Iran and Qatar share the largest natural gas field in the world. It belongs to both countries. They are close to each other. They have a shared economic interest, and they are essentially obligated to cooperate. And on a certain level, they do cooperate. So why would Iran attack Qatar? And why would it even think about attacking Qatar's gas industries? The answer is Europe and Asia. Qatar provides about a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas. Think about it. Such a small country occupies such a large share of the global energy market. The moment Iran hits these facilities and causes Qatar to stop production, if in fact it succeeds in stopping production, it creates an immediate global energy crisis. By doing this, it exerts economic pressure on all Western countries in the hope that Western nations will be the ones to force a ceasefire, or in some other way stop the attacks on Iran. And if not through the West, then perhaps through Qatar. Because the Qataris might look at this and think, wow, we're losing so much money and influence. We must use our lobby in the United States, wink wink Tucker Carlson, wink wink, and stop this attack on Iran. It's also worth remembering that the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which is the largest American base in the Middle East, is something that obviously the Iranians don't like. One more thing to remember, the Qataris are much more efficient than the Iranians at turning their natural gas into a high-quality product that can be sold. The Iranians have a lot, but they're just not as skilled at selling it. And of course, they are under sanctions. If the Iranian regime falls and Iran actually becomes a pro-Western country, for the Qataris, that is a disaster because it essentially breaks their monopoly. It would mean that modern Western companies would enter Iran and start operating the energy fields there, and that would hit Qatar's monopoly and could greatly weaken it. So on the one hand, Qatar is suffering because of Iran, and on the other hand, the Iranians know the Qataris don't really want them to lose. So there is a cynical game being played here between Qatar and Iran. But let's not just talk about Qatar. Let's talk about some other countries, especially one that really took a hit in extensive attacks, the United Arab Emirates. On the surface, it's very strange for Iran to attack the Emirates. The UAE is Iran's second largest trading partner after China. It's just crazy. This is the country that sustains your economy. And it's not just trade. Many Iranian companies in the Emirates operate from there as it is their only way to participate in global economy without suffering from sanctions, because they are then considered an Emirati company rather than an Iranian one. So once again, on the surface, it sounds illogical for Iran to attack them. But during a war that the Iranians believe is existential, trade considerations are probably pushed aside. You also have to remember that in the UAE, there are Western military bases, like many of the countries in the region. But it's not just that. The UAE also symbolizes the new Middle East, with the Abraham Accords and their relatively close relationship with Israel. The Emiratis also have an image of a safe financial and tourism center. when Iran fires hundreds of missiles and UAVs at Dubai and Abu Dhabi, including at airports and luxury hotels, it shatters that image. It shatters the image of the Emiratis being part of a global economy, of being the place people come to do business, of being the futuristic city that will be the center of the world economy. It simply destroys that. Because who wants to come live in a place where the airport is being blown up? On the other hand, this is a very dangerous move on the part of the Iranians, which also shows how desperate they are. Because when they fire at Dubai, they are indeed hitting the United Arab Emirates' soft underbelly. And yes, as I said, the Emiratis need quiet to prosper. The entire strategy for the Emirates, for their future, is built on these cities, and the Iranians are banking on the Emirates being so terrified by this that they will use their lobby to beg the United States to stop the war. But it could also go in the opposite direction, because you have to remember and you have to know another thing about the UAE. The UAE is one of the most militarized countries in the world. There is a mandatory conscription there, and the Emirati army is very large relative to the population, even larger than the Israeli army. They have an advanced and strong military. They have a strong air force. So as Iranians, are you sure you want to fire at the Emirates? Are you really sure? Let's talk about another country that is very strange for the Iranians to choose to fire at. Oman. Oman is the sort of Switzerland of the Middle East. It's the eternal mediator. It maintains close and excellent relations with Iran. So an Iranian strike on ships in the Gulf of Oman or on the Omani territory is very strange. The logic here is that Iran is trying to erase Omani neutrality. It's signaling to all the players who held the approach that they could be everyone's friend, that you can't be everyone's friend in a total war. As if to say, if I'm attacked from your territory, everyone will pay a price, including you. But let's talk about why Iran depends on Oman and why Oman depends on Iran. So, the reason Iran depends on Oman is its diplomatic pipeline. Oman is the ultimate mediator for a regime like Iran, which is essentially isolated. Oman is an irreplaceable asset because it is the only reliable communication channel, the most important and most discreet one between Iran and the West, especially the United States. For example, the contacts for the nuclear agreement from a decade ago, that was through Oman. And the negotiations that were happening with Iran before the war, that was also Oman. And if Iran wants to send a secret message to the Americans now, it will do it through Oman. So yes, the Iranians need Oman, and the fact that they are firing at Oman shows how desperate they are. On the other hand, Oman also needs Iran. Like the case of Qatar or the Emirates, we have a case where you're firing at each other, but you know they need you too. Oman, together with Iran, control the Straits of Hormuz. Yes, on the one side we have the Omanis, and on the other side we have the Iranians. So Oman knows that any escalation or blockage of this straits by Iran will hurt them. So they need good working relations. Another thing the Omanis need from Iran is a counterweight to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, because the Emirates and Saudi Arabia are Oman's neighbors. They are wealthy, strong countries. And the Omanis fear the assertiveness of these neighbors. If we look at Yemen, Sudan, or Somalia, countries in the region, we know that Emiratis and the Saudis tend to intervene in the internal affairs of smaller or weaker countries. To maintain Omani independence, Oman needs a closeness to Iran. It's like a subtle hint. The message to the Saudis and Emirates is that you probably shouldn't interfere with us, otherwise the Iranians will bite you. And, by the way, it's also the other way around. They know that if they aren't on the side of the Iranians, since Inside Oman, there are many different ethnic groups. They know that Iranians love to use those ethnic tensions to dismantle countries from within. So that's like, okay, we'll give the Iranians a big bear hug, and in return, we hope the Iranians won't do to us what they're doing in Yemen or Lebanon or Iraq, meaning dismantle us from within by supporting one group or another. So yes, the Iranians attacked Oman, but it's clear there's a relatively complex relationship here. Let's take a moment to look at our biggest star, Saudi Arabia, the most important country in the region. Iran attacked Saudi Arabia as well. An attack on the Saudi energy industry is a red line, a semi-red line in the Middle East. Because in the Middle East, and I'm not talking about Israel, I'm talking more about the Gulf region, the very wealthy countries with gas and oil and all that snazz, hidden energy is a declaration of economic war. These countries are completely dependent on this industry, and Iran is also doing it out of desperation. The goal is to spike oil prices, because if oil prices rise, the hope is that all Western countries will feel this pain in their citizens' pockets, and then hopefully they will also start with all kinds of anti-Semitic conspiracies that Israel dragged them into war, and now look what happened, the Jews again caused us all to go bankrupt, just like they did in the Weimar Republic in Germany, and other anti-Semitic lies. You can use your imagination. Although, as much as hidden the oil industry is a red line, it's not the worst thing you can do in the Middle East. The worst thing you can do, and I don't know if this has happened or not, maybe it has, is a strike on water desalination plants. That is the biggest nightmare of the Middle East. It's worse than hidden the oil. Take countries like Kuwait, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia. These countries rely on between 50 and 90% of their drinking water from desalination plants. If the Iranians hit these plants of the countries, these countries could become unfit for human habitation within a week. It's literally holding the countries hostage. Another thing about this whole story, Iran itself. There were claims from the Iranians that the entire Iranian chain of command is essentially dismantled, which kind of makes sense with all of the assassinations. That means that the Revolutionary Guard units are doing more or less whatever they want, and maybe firing whatever they feel like it. One could easily claim that there isn't a strategy behind the attacks on the neighbors at all, though personally, I think that the units have general instructions on how to act in the case of a total war. And now, I want to give you another twist. We talked about how the Iranians will try to make it bad for the West, that it will greatly raise oil prices and all that. But what about China? After all, China desperately needs oil from the Middle East. It lives on it. And it doesn't produce oil itself as the United States does. Sure, oil prices will rise in the United States, but the United States produces its own oil. It's not as if it doesn't have anywhere to get it from if it isn't brought from the outside. So, we have to ask, what about China? Well, I'll reveal to you a secret, a known secret, but one that not many people are familiar with. Throughout the last year, 2025, China stockpiled oil. It took advantage of the fact that oil prices were relatively low during certain periods and bought enormous quantities of oil, much more than it needed for daily use. Now, the talk is that China currently has strategic reserves, surpluses of oil that are supposed to last for a bit more than 6 months. Now, why did China do this? Well, if you're Chinese, you'll say it's because the Chinese are very wise and very smart, and they understood the region. They prepared exactly for the scenario that is happening now. The Chinese understood there was going to be a confrontation between Israel and Iran or the United States, and that it would paralyze energy exports from the Persian Gulf. And then everyone in the world would need energy, and while places like Europe, Japan, Korea, rivals of China, those countries will be in a panic, China will be just fine. But maybe that's not the reason the Chinese did it. It could be that the Chinese did it because their original plan was to use it to invade Taiwan. Because the moment they invade Taiwan, the Americans will immediately close off the Malacca Strait or other chokeholds that they control. So it could be that this was actually intended for Taiwan, and now the Chinese will have to burn through their reserves on a US war in Iran and not on their own war in Taiwan. But China is a topic for another time. Though, just think about it. First Venezuela, then Iran, during that time also Greenland, northern oil routes from Russia. It seems like there is a complicated and big plan going on here. Thank you for joining us once again. If you've enjoyed this, please like and share. Comment below on your thoughts on why Iran is attacking everyone. And don't forget, Netivyah is here in the heart of Jerusalem, in the midst of this war, feeding the poor and the needy, supplying the IDF, and doing all we can to support Israel. So please keep us in your prayers. Shalom.